Hi, it's Shannon Olson with my Utah agents, here to explain the real estate purchase contract. Obviously, it's our job as professionals to not only know how to fill out the blanks in the contract, but what actually each section means and what your clients are obligating themselves to, because it is legal and binding. Obviously, that means once all parties have agreed to all terms of the contract and you do have official acceptance, they are bound to whatever those terms are. So let's go through page 1 together. On the very top section, it's going to state that on this day, whatever day you are actually making the offer, say for example, you are preparing it on August 8th, but your clients cannot sign it on August 8th. They are going to sign it on the 9th, and that's when you're going to present it. You do want to update that date to whatever day you are actually having it signed and sent over to the sellers. So it states on this day, the 8th day of August 2018, which is now going to be called the offer reference date. That is going to be the date that you are going to put in the top section of any and all future addendums, because it is stating that those addendums pertain to this specific real estate purchase contract. Sean and Britton Lamb are now the buyers. So going forward, anytime it mentions buyers, it's referencing Sean and Britton Lamb. You do want to make sure that you are including any and all parties on this line that are going to be on your loan. So if they are getting a loan, you do want to have all of them on this. And also if they do have a familiar name and they want to add in middle initials or full legal names, or they want to do it any certain way, such as that, this is how it's going to be transferred onto title. So you're definitely going to want to make sure that you have it exactly how they want title to appear. So Sean and Britton Lamb offered to purchase the property from Scott M. Wheeler. We did pull the seller's exact name from the county records, which I always suggest you doing to cross-reference and make sure you spell it correctly. Because again, if you have any errors in spelling, that's going to be a discrepancy and could be something that comes up later down the road. The property described below and agrees to deliver no later than 4 calendar days after acceptance. Now keep in mind that calendar days does include Saturday, Sundays, and holidays. Earnest money in the amount of whatever you and your clients agree to. Obviously, we put $5,000 down on this one, and that is because we were in multiple offers scenario, and these guys were planning to put down 20% anyways, and they wanted to look really strong to the seller, so they put down $5,000, which is still obviously their money and going to go towards their down payment. So we're just going to do an even better job, just making sure we do protect that earnest money in the form of, typically you're going to put check. Sometimes they may want to wire it to the brokerage. Never accept cash. Obviously, that's a big no-no, because you do want to be able to track the earnest money. After acceptance of the real estate purchase contract by buyer and seller and receipt of the earnest money by the broker shall then have 4 calendar days in which to deposit the earnest money into the brokerage real estate trust account. So typically from the time we have acceptance to the time the check is deposited and cleared is about 8 calendar days total. Clients have half of that to get you the check, and then we have another 4 days to get it deposited. They offered to purchase the property located at 1962 Brinker Avenue. Again, sometimes when you're auto-populating the information from the MLS, sometimes somebody may have 1962 S for South Brinker Avenue. You're going to want to make sure it matches exactly what the county shows on their records. So every once in a while you may have it wrong, and the lender will ask you to do an addendum to update it to match. So just be proactive, and again, make sure you have the appropriate spelling of buyer and seller's names, and obviously as well as the property address, and you're going to reference the tax ID number as well. So in the city of Ogden, Weber County, Utah 840 or 84401 tax ID, which is now going forward called the property. Any reference below to the term property shall include the property described above, together with included items and water rights or shares, if any, referenced in section 1.1, 1.2, and 1.4. So what is included? Pretty much anything attached to the property by an L. So obviously the structure, the systems, and they do add in a couple gray areas that used to not be a part of the real estate purchase contract, but now that are included automatically. So that's going to include solar panels, ovens, and ranges that you can actually pull out. So you just unplug and pull out. Those automatically are included. Dishwashers, obviously, ceiling fans, water heaters, water softeners, light fixtures and bulbs, bathroom fixtures, bathroom mirrors, all window coverings, including curtains, draperies, rods, window blinds, and shutters. Sometimes you're going to have clients that have matching curtains that go with either their couches, throw pillows, a nursery, bedding. So make sure if your clients do want to exclude any of those, if you're representing them as a seller, that you do mention that in not only the MLS listing, but also on the real estate purchase contract, because your real estate purchase contract does trump anything that the MLS states. So when you auto-populate, obviously it's going to put in certain things, just cross-reference it and make sure that it matches exactly what you want it to be, and do an addendum to change it or to counter anything if they are asking for something that your clients do not want to include. Because once you have acceptance, obviously your seller is then obligated themselves to leave those items. Some other things that are automatically included are automatic garage door openers. So if there's a garage, and if there's one or two openers, they're supposed to leave those as well. Security systems, fencing, and any other landscaping. Every once in a while, you're going to have people that do have solar, but they lease it. So just know that that means those solar panels, even though they have a lease or possibly a loan, that doesn't mean you exclude them unless you specifically exclude them, or you figure that out in an addendum, obviously addressing that. Other included items are going to possibly be the most often things is going to be the refrigerator and the microwave. A lot of time the microwave is the microwave hood that is actually attached to the property. But again, you never want to leave anything in question, so just always make sure you are checking those boxes. And also, again, if you're representing the seller and they were planning to take their fridge, make sure you're looking to verify that the refrigerator is not checked on this. Also, we were going to ask for the storage shed and then the armoire in the basement bedroom, because otherwise it wouldn't have been technically a bedroom because it didn't have a closet. So we're just clarifying that. The above checked item shall be conveyed to the buyer under separate bill of sale with warranties as to the title. That is because they don't want you to sell or buy a fully furnished home with a bunch of personal property that then is going to puff up the price. So exaggerate the price of the home because you're including a bunch of personal property. So those personal property items will be conveyed on a separate bill of sale. Sometimes money is exchanged for those items separately, and sometimes the seller's just going to leave it for him. So just make sure that you do clarify that. In addition to any other boxes checked in this section 1.2 above, there are or are not additional items of personal property the buyer intends to acquire from the seller at closing by separate written agreement. So you're just stating, is there any other things that you haven't disclosed that the buyer is purchasing, or are there not? Anything that you want to be excluded, especially if it is going to be any of those gray areas, such as I would say surround sound speakers, different things like that, you're definitely going to want to make sure that you're either putting them in included or excluded items. More than often, some people do put in excluded items, washer and dryer, because they just want to specifically mention that those are excluded just because sometimes they are going to be included in the sale of the home. I would have to say refrigerators are the most often, next to microwaves, and then washer and dryer. My guess would be maybe 10% of homes have washer and dryers included. A majority of them do not. Water services on section 1.4. The purchase price for the property shall include all the water rights and water shares, if any, that are the legal source for seller's current culinary water service and irrigation water service, if any, to the property. The water rights and water shares will be conveyed for or otherwise transferred to buyer at closing by applicable deed or legal instruments. The following water rights, water shares, if applicable, are specifically excluded from the sale. You do not want to leave anything blank, so we put none, meaning none are to be excluded. I have had a seller that was selling an old farm home in Uinta, that they did have 9 water shares, and water shares are getting to be the hot commodity. And when we went to close, he wanted additional money for those water shares. He didn't mention that before then. He just figured at closing that he could get a couple thousand extra out of them. And we had to let him know because they are automatically included and we didn't specifically address them as excluded, that those had to be conveyed with the sale of the property. Obviously, you don't like last minute things coming up at the 12th hour, especially if they had a specific idea in mind as to what was going to be included and excluded. So again, sometimes mistakes happen, but it's always good to be proactive and address that, learn from all of our past mistakes, and just make sure if they do have additional land, I would say typically over half an acre, more than likely or not, they may have irrigation or water shares or water rights. Proactively ask them for certificates and educate them that those are to be included unless otherwise specifically mention that they're excluded on that section. Section 2, purchase price of the property. Payment of purchase price. The purchase price for the property is $180,000, except as provided in this section. The purchase price shall be paid as provided below, meaning how are they paying for this property? Obviously, in section A, we are going to have this reflect what we already have up top. So make sure that you're not putting 2 different amounts in here. So earnest money deposit. And then are they doing any additional earnest money deposit, which we will go over in 8.4 later in the real estate purchase contract, to where once they complete their due diligence process, they can put additional earnest money deposit down. That would be typical. Say your clients are not putting down as much as the seller would like, and maybe it's because they don't have the funds. They need to wait for another paycheck or 2 to come in, or something to that effect, or they don't feel comfortable until the inspection process is done to put down more than what they were originally planning on. They can do that in section 8.4. And then how much are they getting in the new loan? If you know the amount, you can put that in here. I like to do TBD, to be determined, because you never really know exactly what it's going to be. And they do have some variance, but I just don't like putting something in here and misrepresenting, because I always feel like the lender can and should have the option to switch things around. Is the seller financing any part of this purchase price? You may see that every once in a while as people maybe assume loans, and somehow, some way, that buyer is assuming that loan, but the purchase price is for more, and they don't have the means to pay that additional equity. Otherwise, the seller may finance that additional amount. Or back in the day when lenders were really conservative and strict, and buyers maybe weren't meeting the qualifications of the lender, we were seeing a lot more seller financing happen. However, if there's a loan on the property, typically the seller cannot finance it legally. So make sure that if you are doing seller financing, you do look into it further and get educated on the options to make sure you're not doing something illegal, because if that lender finds out that the property is seller financed and it's not with the original person that was purchasing the property that had that loan, they may call it due. And we've seen it happen, and it causes a lot of turmoil. So just make sure you're being proactive and looking into that. Balance of purchase price and cash at settlement, that is your additional down payment funds. So again, I put TBD, to be determined, but I am stating on here because these guys were purchasing this as a rental property, meaning they're not owner occupying it. So they do have to put a minimum of 20% down. So that's what I'm stating on here. Typically, all of these will have amounts that would then total your total purchase price of $180. So just to mention again, this purchase price here at the bottom needs to match this purchase price here up at the top, and make sure your math adds up, or you're doing what I did similar to here. Sell a buyer's property. So buyer's ability to purchase the property to obtain the loan referenced in 2.1C above. So if they are getting a loan, are any or all of the portion of cash referenced in that condition upon the sale of real estate owned by the buyer, meaning for them to get approved for the loan or for them to have the money that they are stating they have to put down in cash at settlement, is that condition upon them selling their home or any other property owned by the buyer. So you do have to disclose that now. So is it or is it not conditioned upon that? If checked in the affirmative, then you do have to attach a subject to sell a buyer's property addendum. So if it states yes, then you know automatically you need to have an additional addendum stating that it is subject to the sale of the buyer's property. And then we will go over section 3 later as we head into page 2 of 6 of the real estate purchase contract.